Is Clive in the room? Yes, he is in the room, always ready. The CBRN-E pillar. Then Rolf Jan. Wow, the Seveso pillar in this case. We will we'll have Martin for the SIM21. Then, well, I will say a few words about the sub-teams 2-2. Then we have Wolfgang and Olga. Will you do that in tandem or for the reporting? How do you manage? How you do it? Together, okay? Then I liberate the... and then we will have Philip Hohenblum. So what I would suggest is that you have well, don't try not to be too long. It will be filmed. So this will be, it's only to have general information on the different panels, knowing that we'll have very full reports available. Okay. So I leave you in sequence, in fact. So you will be starting, Clive, and yeah, just please, thank you.
Okay, so the CBRN Research Action Session, we discussed many topics across the research action. Some of the areas that came out was the need for a more holistic approach to system development and taking into account some of the other domains and systems that aren't necessarily taken as part of the actions, such as health and environment. Particularly the need for improved human factors. Other issues raised were, is there going to be a risk in the future of using technologies such as artificial intelligence to do detection surveillance, say, for CBRN low probability events? Areas around new decontamination systems and forensics. The panel discussed new innovative approaches to chemical sensor networks and the importance that these solutions need to be scalable and interoperable. Interoperability is a key part for any innovation that's developed. And new approaches for CBRN material detection in containers and design and development of harmonized CBRN training curriculum for first responders and emergency doctors, the Melody project. Other points raised were some of the traditional ones we have in the area of do we need new mechanisms to help innovation get into the market and turn proof of concepts into reality. We also tried a little experiment, an interactive poll with the audience on what were the main actions that stopped research getting into the market. And some of the responses came back were mainly around things like interoperability, standards, that we're very conservative and risk-averse, so things never get into the market, investment, training, general knowledge, and the fact that the whole subject's a low-probability event. So in concluding on the panel, a number of challenges were basically we need solutions for a holistic approach. As digital transformation progresses and technologies like AI grows, one of the risks in the future might be who makes the decision. The machine learning system, the AI system, or the human, or can the human actually determine whether the system is actually going to work properly? New mechanisms for taking the prototypes to the market, that's one of the many market challenges we have. And then there is the final thing that was raised was how long does an incident stay in the memory of a citizen, and the responsible authority for that matter. With low probability events, many people may ask, why do we need to improve such systems? They're working already, or even conduct research in these areas when there isn't actually perceived to be a problem. Thank you.
So this is about the session forensics that I was thrown into as a chair. A dedicated session on forensic is good and bad at the same time. I will get back to that later. First of all, we started off with a little bit of semantics about the terminology. What is CBRN forensic? And surprisingly, the three panelists more or less agreed with each other regarding the definition. And then each of them was throwing some light on the subject matter, both from an organizational point of view by Bart Nijs, then a little bit more into a comprehensive project, the GIF project by Ed van Zalen, and then Catharina Ross from Fraunhofer digged into a little bit deeper from a more technological point of view. Forensics, and that was clearly shown by the panelists, is still a new kid in the block in the CBRN framework. So from that perspective, it's good to have a dedicated session on CBRN forensics. And in order to make that kit grow up a little bit, we need crusaders. Now we have a couple of crusaders, CBRN forensic crusaders in the room. And you need people asking critical questions about the do's and don'ts and what it is and what it is not. And they were also in the room, and on top of that you need a critical dialogue between the two, and that is exactly what happened yesterday in a friendly atmosphere. And so that was good. And the summary is we are maturing the kit. The kit's not yet there, so forensics is not yet a full-grown capability of the CBRN system, but we will slowly get there. And CoU will be a platform to make that happen.
Yeah. Not yet.
Wolfgang, we'll start with the three specific themes, and then we'll continue at the end.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I will shortly report back on the session, the panel discussion we had yesterday on Seveso. The session actually started with a discussion on how to measure the impacts of incidents in the CBRN domain, measuring deaths versus injuries, material damage, etc., and a need to solidify data collection on this in order to better be aware of responses you need. And the second point of the discussion focused on interlinking safety and security, because currently those aspects are more or less addressed in silos. They have different causes, but yet the responses to these causes are very much similar. And in a bit broader scope, also how to address emerging risks, for example, resulting from climate change, process automation, aging of equipment, and things like that. And many of the panelists highlighted a need to include more sites than only the Seveso sites, because Seveso sites are quite well prepared in many aspects, but those who fall outside the scope, that there was a feeling that there is still a need for more action in that area. The third element of the discussion was the need to bring all the actors together. So more joint exercises, for example, of safety and security, operators. There was an example of a company within Europe where it's mandatory for the chemical engineers to spend part of their time in the safety department, so that process operators become aware of safety and security aspects. And I think that's a very valid point. Then the discussion moved on into the area of process automation, which can be a blessing on one hand because you think we can eradicate human error, but there were also illustrations and examples mentioned where it actually turned into the contrary, where a system is performing or initiating actions on its own which are unwanted because it was not properly adjusted or not properly installed and things like that. So there's also a need in that area. and linked to that, cyber threats. So if you have a high degree of process automation, you also become vulnerable from the aspect of cyber threats. And then towards the end of the discussion, we moved to risks which are outside of the Seveso area, more or less. So I also already mentioned the non-Seveso sites, but also transport issues, for example. If it's very well controlled on the site, you still have transport movement with lorries or transport through pipelines, etc., where there is much less preparedness, much less aspects of land use planning and things like that. So aspects that are quite crucial for safety and security culture, but they more or less go unnoticed. And the last point of the discussion was about how to provide tools to the competent and local authorities for them to be better equipped. It starts not only with more research, that it was broadly felt that this is more needed. There are only few universities in Europe that really actually are active in this field, and many other universities leave the area open, more or less. And there was one example from France, for example, where there was joint actions after the malevolent incidents they had in 2015, where police force and safety process engineers and, for example, the operators of installations were much more joining forces, exchanging experience, doing safety self-assessments and audits, and that was valued by all of them because they really learned from each other. And the last conclusion of that was that there is a need for more guidelines and support at the national level to really support those cases. And that was it from my side.
Yeah, I may report from the drinking water security session. We started with terminology. What is security? What is safety? Drinking water is much related to the control of the product, drinking water. So quality, safety of the product, and what is security? Meaning deliberate attacks to a drinking water system. And this is specific, there are specific measures. On the one hand, there's technological measures feasible, but also guidance, organizational structures that can increase the resilience of water utilities. And for instance, a water security plan directly addressing security issues of water utilities. We have heard about legal frameworks related to drinking water control. First and foremost, the Drinking Water Directive, which is in recast at the moment, the ECI Directive, NIS Directive, all with a relation to security and of drinking water. And as the recast of the drinking water will make the implementation of water safety plans compulsory, or most likely will make them compulsory. The water safety plans do not fully address security. So the more it is important to have a water security plan determining different steps to implement organizational structures in a utility to address security. And this is what ERNSIP's thematic group Water suggests. We presented, colleagues presented a draft of this document, which will be ready by autumn this year, identifying which steps have to be taken into account to prepare a utility, how to implement that, to review the efficacy of measures taken, organizational measures taken, and of course take into account proper communication. That all relates and needs to be linked to the classical procedures. That means analytical procedures. Once by technology an incident has been identified, it needs to be confirmed by classical analytical methods. There will be an update provided in the document of new and more recent technologies like targeted, untargeted methodologies to identify contaminants, but also, and this is already ready, a document describing technological measures and features that are already on the market to identify, to learn the water supply system, which technologies are available, from sensors to software, saying or calculating the most appropriate places in the network and so on. We've heard from a sensor manufacturer experiences. The paradigm was only online monitoring will provide sufficient control of a system to identify a sudden change of the composition of drinking water related to security. Once a system is contaminated, only online monitoring is capable of identifying, of giving an operator the information that the composition has changed, and procedures have to take into force. That, of course, is combined with investment, so security investment into security, which is costs for an operator. And we have heard from another operator at the end of the session, costs are crucial, and of course on being competitive on the market, or investments to the saying was a high investment for a very uncertain or very unlikely event. This is something big companies, big utilities can probably afford, but how do we deal with small utilities just serving a couple of hundred clients, for instance? The more it's important to have a water security plan in place to build on organizational structures. Information needs to be simple. It is a decision support system. The operator needs a very simple information. Is there contamination? Is there not? We have seen a very impressive graphics, a cockpit that gives in 3 colors: red, yellow, green. The impression how the system performs, and this is also key to be simple to provide simple information. And finally, we had also a discussion on how such a system can tackle or can identify other contaminations not caused by deliberate attacks, for instance, by climate change, by storms, by floods, droughts, accidents, for instance. So the technological solution, online monitoring, that is dedicated to security, to identify security issues, also can be used for safety control of the drinking water, and aligns with that. And a paradigm is once, and this is from the experience of our manufacturer, once a system is in place and it needs to be implemented into daily operation, otherwise it is too costly or too seen as a standalone feature. So on the one hand, we have technological solutions, but they need to be integrated into a broader aspect, into a broader approach by organizational features, and one of the solution is our suggestion, the implementation of a water security plan, which is being finalized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have, in fact, to report. I feel like to be a tourist beside the table, but in fact, Antonio Paolucci had to leave, so he just gave me the hot potato to report of a panel in which I did not participate on a topic which I do not know at all. You know, so this is very interesting. It's a good training for me. And I would like to just open this in stressing that what the different reporters have said about the need to link different sectors is crucial. We have seen that in the discussions on safety and security. This is obvious. We have seen that in Seveso, in the water security aspects. And I would like also to stress that in most of our discussions on CBRN-E, actually, we were really focusing on CNB mainly until now. And we have several networks that are being developed, and of which you have heard about eNotice, for example, and Circle. But there is one which is ongoing, which I'm currently dealing with the grant preparation, which is about RN threats, and it is the project is called including, on RN emergency. So it's why I put this panel shared by Antonio Paolucci, who will be coordinating this network. It's just to give you the background, stressing that there are several questions that were supposedly posed in the panels that will be tackled by this network. Antonio sent me some notes, and I will read them. And well, if there are any comments from one of the participants on the panel, don't hesitate. I might be completely out of the, I would say, out track in what I've understood. So Antonio said that it was discussed adoption of virtual world for training and exert capability testing in nuclear security and emergency management. And we expect that indeed training will have to be boosted, and maybe while the links among different actors, and practitioners will help. The second issue that was discussed, I said again, apparently, well, I was not there as a testimony, but increase the EU level of involvement in RN in order to be implemented at national level. And what I understood from the discussions is that competencies are mainly at national level, and that there is a wish to increase the EU level with respect to awareness, coordination, and maybe what we are doing in the CoU, gathering actors at this level, maybe with impact on research programming. This is my interpretation. Increased prevention of nuclear and radiological attacks. Well, this is quite obvious. There is efforts to be done, which is closely related to policies in place, but also to actions that we might define as a support activities in the research world. There were concerns expressed on the price to pay on detection technologies versus security. And what I understood, it was what at stake here are the portals that are, for example, used in airport or subways or harbor to detect RN threats. And what I understand is that there is indeed a very high cost to be paid for being accurate, actually. And the risk is that if you put, I would say, insufficiently validated detection system, you might raise to false alarms, which are counterproductive. Is it what I... well, Lucas, I will pass you the floor because I see that you have a reaction. And then the last bullet, and then I give you the floor. Increase, obviously, competencies and cooperation, which is for me quite obvious. So if you have any clarification to give, please say it.
No, your interpretation is very accurate, and your information very complete. So I don't feel that I need to add anything. Just the previous sentence. Yeah, it was classical problem of reducing false positive alarms. So if we want to alarm about all possible threats, there is always a higher risk of false positive, and we were trying to figure out how to reduce it. But I believe that is the same problem in case of all agents, not only radiological.
Thank you very much, Lukasz. Well, I will terminate now because it was horizontal, so we said that civil military cooperation panel will be terminating this conclusion session.
Yes. Thank you, Philippe. So what was discussed during the session on the civil military cooperation and international cooperation? It was, first of all, confirmed the interest and importance of this civil-military cooperation for all kinds of actors. Because, okay, previously it was noted that this cooperation was sometimes neglected by different actors, but there is more and more understanding of the importance of the synergies between civil and military actors for training, for comparison and exchange of knowledge, of the expertise. It is really important for all kinds of stakeholders. Of course, with this, a lot of recognition of the importance and willingness to push forward this topic, several challenges were identified, not only today, but also previously, but okay, today it was of course discussed. First of all, it is constitutional and legal framework differences in different European member states and different countries. First of all, starting from the expertise in CBRN, because some countries are much more advanced in this, some less. Then it is completely different procedures, both for civilian and for military actors in different countries. And difference in command and control structures, and also difference in responsibilities between civil and military response in case of a CBRN incident, especially in the cross-border incident. Then, of course, there is a question how to deal with it together, but several common points were identified. For example, such structures as civil protection are considered even more pragmatic sometimes than militaries. Overall, militaries are considered to have more budget, more resources, better training in CBRN. But still, sometimes structures like civil protection, they are even more pragmatic because they react quickly. They have more experience when dealing with fire brigades and police teams and medical teams. And then also such structures as military police, for example, they are very close to militaries in training in terms of all the procedures. However, still, the procedures are so different, and sometimes it's really different to compare who is having what, who is doing what. When it comes to training courses, to research, it is difficult to see because militaries usually follow the NATO standards, which are very easily accepted by national authorities, for example. But when it comes to civilian procedures, standards, it is not so obvious anymore, and they are not so easily accepted at the national level even. So there are still many things to work on. Even if we want to compare the contents of the training, the contents of the different courses when provided by different countries, we need to look into all these challenges. So Wolfgang will speak about some solutions which were discussed.
I thought you talked about, already about all the solutions, no, haven't you? Because we were initially following a two-step approach. You might have recognized that. Olga should, and she did finally, should talk about the challenges we were facing according our last session in 3rd of December. So there are some minutes, and this was our first point to start. And as we have heard right now, many of these challenges are remaining, these kind of challenges. So meanwhile, in 3 months, we don't have any or not that many solutions. Taking a closer look into our panelists, it's really interesting. We had my point of view, a good mixture. We had a representative from NATO. We had 2 representatives from the European bodies, one from DG ECHO, one from DG DEFCO. But we had also national contributions from the Belgian and from the Italian side. So it was a really good mixture to get a view on different angles. And just to sum up some findings we had during our presentations. First, let's start with the first one, of course, which was NATO. So there are some new non-binding guidelines on the market. I don't don't worry, I don't read the entire name, which takes too long. It's all about large-scale CBRN incidents and in conjunction with cross-border operations. So there are some guidelines out now, signed by 29 nations, and these now have to be translated into practice. And therefore, in September, we will have a senior advisory conference in Vyškov for 3 days, just to translate this relatively broad, non-binding guidelines into real practice and come up with some practical solutions. But we have also learned about some training offers we have in Vyškov, purely focused on civil-military cooperation. And we've learned about some mobile training possibilities, so that the instructors and the trainers come to the customer all over the world. And finally, we had some interesting discussions after all presentations were given. It's a kind of new trend in the recent couple of years, that many training centers offers mobile training solutions, as we do in Sonthofen with our national CBRN school, but also in Vyškov. And we found out, because this question was raised, a very complex one, that there is no coordination between these mobile training solutions. Not with regard to different customers, different areas, different standards. Everybody is doing just what they find it's good. So maybe this will be a solution, or just to reflect if this could be also incorporated into the e-notice training catalog. So as far as I know, as of now, we do have this, let's say, residential training centers listed, but not the mobile training solutions. Maybe this could be an adaptation of that. We had also some interesting information on military capacities in civil-led operations. We learned about some humanitarian principles. We learned about the ERCC and the mechanism and the civil-military cooperation. And one of the key findings there was that it's always sexy to compare capacities. But this is not relevant at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's relevant how to bring these capacities into place. And this is way more than just comparing the capacities. So it's the interoperability questions, the questions of doctrine, the question of training, and so on and so forth. And this is a key challenge, not only comparing the capacities. We had also from DJ DevCo a presentation on promoting interaction with regard to civil-military cooperation. And one finding was, for example, that the EU requested the center to cooperate with a mobile training team in Morocco this year. So the center works also together with the EU. Then I think we had some interesting national presentation from the Belgian side, and they made a very frank analysis of the status quo recently ago, and they come up with a frank result. It's civil-military cooperation is too much theoretical. And they come up with some solutions to put more practical issues in that. So it's kind of multidisciplinary project, also linked to EU with the GIFT project, with the Biogarden project, and internal from the Belgium side, there's an agreement to work together between 6 Belgian stakeholders with regard to CBRN incidents. So this is a good approach forward, and to make such good approach is always good to make a frank and true analysis of the situation currently being in place. We further learned about outreach, not only the national side, but also to transport CBRN knowledge into other areas, other countries, and we had a good example regarding the Lebanon, where Italy is engaged to provide the Lebanon civil and military first responders knowledge with regard to CBRN incidents. And I can affirm this is really a good approach, especially with regard to Lebanon, because they are very keen to learn something, they are highly motivated, and they are using not only this strength to improve their capabilities. Also in Vyshkov, we have from time to time core students from the Lebanon, and they're really good. And nationally from the German side at the CBRN school in Sonthofen, we train them year after year, and they're really very professional. And the good approach from the Italian side, they train first the civilian, then the military, and then they come up to a common approach, civil-military training. Because civil and military might be different in some glances, but at the end of the day, they have to work together. So it's, in my point of view, that's a brilliant approach to deal with that. We then had also a question. So usually it's the case that the panelists are providing some insights and some information about what they are doing. But I think this time it was very valuable to raise a question to the audience. So what is especially the civil audience, expecting for the military? And focused on the process, how to implement capabilities. So it's not only buying some stuff, put it in the garage and let it run. So there's much more. And in NATO, it's a kind of Bible to follow a kind of approach, which is doctrine, organization, training, what is else, interoperability, facilities, and personnel. So, and following this approach, at the end of the day, we will have the right capabilities. And this is also worth to reflect in the civilian world. I know they are doing it more or less in the same way, but not as strict as we do in NATO. Did I forget something? Really? Okay. Then for me it was an honor to be here. Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, I will promote the CoU in the upcoming CBRN-E summit in Birmingham in 2 weeks. Thank you.
I would like to thank very much all the rapporteur, to all of you who are participating and gave inputs to the discussions. It's not perfect in a way because we cannot cover all the issues. As well, you mentioned there are still very few solutions to be provided, but I would like to say that it's a process. As I explained already on Monday, we are really reflecting on a governance system that will enable to link this type of forum to different events, projects, and so on, and provide really concrete output from what is going on in different areas. It's a long-term process because we want to have responsibilities being given to different thematic groups. We need to give you ownership also of what happened here, providing input, so feel free if you have things that you heard or did not hear, to send us your inputs as well, because we need to listen to you and we need your feedback, because we will be progressing in listening to each other. And what I hope, and again, it's already a long way, because since 2014 we have made a very long way. Now we need really to provide some things that will be useful to all, and concrete information. Meeting is nice atmosphere and so on, but at the end of the day, we are all professionals, and with time which is precious, and we need to get something very concrete about this discussion. It's what we'll be developing over the next year. We will implement a system by which thematic group responsibility will be clearly given to people who want to take this over. linking with different entities, so that at the end of each year we will get state-of-the-art report that will be very strong and reflect really the views by different actors. So this is my promise, because for me it's a big challenge over the next 2 years to do it, so that at when we will be in Horizon Europe first year, we have a very strong platform in place that will enable all these exchanges to take place in a concrete and coordinated manner. And with this, I thank you very much again. I thank you all. There is some poster that I believe, I don't know, I did not check that, but in principle there is a poster session that will allow you to leave the room sweetly, have some chat, last coffee, and kiss each other, and bye-bye, and see you next time. The next group on standardization will start here at 11:30. You need to leave to have everything left by, in half an hour from now. Thank you very much.